can sit in a restaurant and you just feel like somebody's watching you, and you turn, and sure enough, they've been glaring at you.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, so we know when there's intention upon us, but they're incredibly intuitive that way. It's not necessarily psychic. It's just they're very attuned to their environment, and they can almost feel your energy focused on them.
Well, since I talked about it, and, even when Ed was on the show, I would get messages from people, well, why didn't you had a camera, you were out taking pictures, why didn't you take a picture? Well, you know what my answer was? I was in the military. I went through Vietnam. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This scared me more than anything I ever had encountered in my life, because it was a shock, number one. Well, number one, I never believed in Bigfoot. I'd seen that one movie they made, prior to that, in the theater. And, I laughed. I figured, oh, this is so fake, And I never thought they existed. And, when I saw one, and I will say this. A lot of people, when they describe a Bigfoot, now maybe there's different species of Bigfoot. I don't know. But I will say this, when it ran, I did manage to turn my head a couple of times as we were running. You see if it was catching up to us. And I can tell you, it was running on 2 legs, and occasionally, from what I saw, it was on 4 and then back to 2.
Yes, exactly. There's a really good video, part of a research project that I'm going to be revealing on ghost hunting theories, but if you go to M.K. Davis's YouTube channel, he has a video called Whitey's Run. And when you watch this, you see the Bigfoot. It's a white Bigfoot. He comes out of the trees. And then when there's a clearing, he gets down on all 4 and gallops. Then he gets up on his feet and he runs really fast. But they do both things. And I think this is because they are evolved and acclimated for mountainous terrains. And that is very advantageous for them, and they still utilize it. Very flexible hips. They can actually leap themselves further on all 4.
That's what I believe, because like Ed Romans, before we talked for a good hour before I brought him on the air, everything he saw matched, identical, to what I saw. Because him and his dog, they lived out in the country, like on a farm, but then he would go out to the woods and go take him his dog for, a walk, to forget about his career, forget about his problems, and he'd go for a walk. And then he said about 1,500 feet away, he saw like a bear. And then he realized it wasn't a bear. And then it ran after him. Same thing. 2 legs, 4 legs. 2 legs, 4 legs. But it chased him for, he said, a great distance, but then he turned around the last time and it was gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All it wanted to do was get him out of there. And that it sounds infeasible for them to get on all 4, and that would be really uncomfortable for you and I. It would, because our legs are much more than like half our body height.
Yeah.
For a Bigfoot, their legs are about 1/3 of their body height, and their arms are long. So when they get on all 4, their butt's not up in the air. They're quite comfortable. It's very normal for them. If I had their proportions with my leg length, I'd be about 8 feet tall.
And probably about 500 and some pounds. That's what I...
Oh, at least. Yeah.
That,
I think I'm complaining about my weight now. I can't imagine.
Well, I'm still trying to lose 100 pounds I gained from the prednisone. And it's not working.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing seems to be working. At a certain age, you get
it's
the
a hard
weight.
One to,
yeah,
it's a hard one to get rid of. It really is.
To me, when I saw that, like a Bigfoot, like what I saw, it looks like God made a mistake. Should have put the arms where the legs were, and the legs where the arm sockets were.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. The one I saw, I was like, this is just the proportions, and I sat down eventually and tried to sketch it out, and it just didn't make sense. And then as I became a researcher, I started looking at the proportions of, a chimpanzee or an orangutan, and they're very similar, with 1/3 of their leg, being their height. So, and if you look at the Patty film, if you take the length of her legs, you can see they're 1/3 of her height, and you can't really put somebody in a costume and achieve that.
No, I've seen, you can pretty much see, I get people sending me, videos and pictures that want to be on the show. And I was one of the first people to have the honor to use Photoshop when it first even before it hit the market, because I ran a couple major professional camera stores, and we had our lab, and they wanted to get the bugs out of it, and they wanted to train people how to use it. And I was really good at that time frame using Photoshop. So, I mean, I can tell pretty much when something's been really manipulated. And, I mean, a lot of people send me stuff I look at, oh, wow, I sure hate to be that guy in that suit. Because they're out of standing too straight. They don't stand straight. Number one, I mean, from everyone I've seen or I talked to that actually has encountered one, nobody has told me that they stand perfectly straight and run straight. Yeah. They don't.
Yeah, I see what you mean. The one I saw, I thought it had like a Dowager's hump. You know, that hump you get in the top of your back when you're old?
Yeah.
Looking back, I think that was probably the hair flowing down in that area, but the head had been pitched forward, so it made it seem exaggerated.
Now, when you saw that, I'm sure you went up to your husband, right, and the rest of the people in the group. Okay.
No, I didn't.
You didn't.
No, it happened. It happened so quickly. In my mind, I thought, well, I could call him over, but if I call him over, I show him just a clearing. There's nothing there. There's nobody there now. He's gone. And like I said, he was not a person who was at all amenable to things he didn't believe in, not especially in front of his friends. They were all engineers. So it was not a crowd that I would want to solicit that to. And in my mind, I was still trying to figure out what I had just seen. Like, why is it here? How did it get here? And, that's not a gorilla. If it's a person, then what if they come to our camp tonight? And I did not sleep that whole night. I kept thinking he's going to find us up there. But
so you were you were scared.
Yeah. It was. I would have been laughed at, ridiculed, and then bullied into shutting up. And that's the kind of situation I was in. So I had to deal with that all on my own. I had to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, too bad your husband didn't see it. Maybe it would have changed him at the time,
Oh, he would have talked himself out of it immediately. He had seen me do psychic reads on people at parties. People would, shove their palm at me or hand me a piece of jewelry or whatever and ask me to do a reading. And he'd watch me do it. And I came up with extraordinary details that I couldn't possibly know from people I've never met. And he would just sort of back away. He didn't want to see it. He didn't want to talk about it. So it scared him.
Did he try to get you to quit doing it too, out of curiosity?
Yeah, he pretty much told me a lot of times, okay, we're going to have a party or we're going to a party. Don't tell anybody. But sure enough, somebody at the party usually knew that I had that skill, and it got around. And he'd be very embarrassed. So when I started my blog, even I had started my blog 2 years before I got the divorce. But he would tell me, okay, we're having a party. And these are work people, and you're not to talk about paranormal. Don't tell them about your blog. Don't talk about horror movies. I'm like, okay.
Now, when did you start your blog?
2008.
Boy, that's a long time.
Oh, wow. Come to think of it, in September, it's 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, and the internet really didn't evolve anything to around the 2000s. Before that, I mean, like in the 1999, I think it started going somewhere. Before that, you get a computer, you go onto a bulletin board and post stuff. I mean, when the internet started opening up, I mean, that's when, people could research things, and that's when, things started.
I found my tribe. I was so happy. I was always looking for my people, and I'm in the Phoenix area, and it's not particularly friendly about weird stuff.
Sharon, you mind?
So I had to go online to find them.
You mind if we take a call? Okay, let's do this. Hi, you have Night Dreams Talk Radio. This is Gary. Who do we have?
Gary, this is your paranormal lawyer calling in, Michael W. Hall.
Am I being sued again?
No, I'm just here to make sure that you don't get sued.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, I was watching your live thing off and on. Unfortunately, I had to, get on and off, but it was kind of interesting tonight.
It was very interesting tonight. We have got to get Michael Beers on your show and discuss some of his close encounters with UFOs and even Bigfoot. This guy is a very interesting character.
Oh, wow. Now, do you have a question for Sharon? I mean, she's been into the paranormal a long time. She's actually had an encounter, if you just noticed, with a Bigfoot. And I think, don't you, Sharon, run a paranormal group too, Ghost Hunters or something like that? Uh-oh, I think we lost her. Okay, hang on, Michael.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to try to get her back. Okay, let's see. Are you there, Sharon? Okay, I'm calling her back right now. Let's see if we can get her back. And maybe we can't. Hang on for a minute. Okay, let's see if this works. Are you still there, Sharon? Okay, who do we have? Anybody yet? Hey, Sharon?
I'm still here myself.
I think Sharon's in there, too. Are you there,
I'm
Sharon?
here.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm having problems with Skype. It is so bizarre. I mean, last night I took a call, and I had 5 people talking at one time.
Oh, my goodness.
And when you're doing a talk show, that's not good. So I'm going to go to a different system. But, hey, Michael, go ahead and ask your questions to her.
Well, I'm very interested in the fact that you've got paranormal experiences in both ufology and cryptids with Bigfoots there. Have you had any experience or knowledge of whether these two subjects are merged somehow, these Bigfoot being potentially either extraterrestrial themselves or having some connection with the UFOs?
Oh, that's a really good question, Michael. And it's one that I hear people talk about a lot. And I take all theories seriously and give them consideration because I think it's arrogant to dismiss anything because it can come back and you'll be eating crow. So I always say, if it's possible that they're alien, how would that work? So that's how I work with things when people have theories that are a little exceptional. A lot of people do try to put together Bigfoot and UFOs, and I would say the same thing I say about I've had what you would call lifelong encounters with alien greys, contactee. And as a contactee, I realize that there's something going on in which they are observing, maybe altering, maybe changing history a little, maybe tweaking DNA, who knows. But if they do it for us, they will do it for these other people. So I think they are just as much encountering, having contact with, being abducted by, and observed as we are. I mean, we're different branches of man. I'm sure they've got to be interested. What did this man get? What did this man get? Why is this one succeeding? Why is this one failing? So that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, good point. You're right. Because I mean, there's been stories, of course, of the cattle abductions, mutilations, the UFOs even abducting deer or elk. I remember there was a famous elk abduction story that Peter Davenport was telling me here in the state of Washington. Mm-hmm. So you would think that if they're interested in all sorts of life forms here on the planet, for what reason I don't know, they wouldn't stop at not figuring out Bigfoot or potentially even having some kind of connection, because obviously we've heard of the idea that big feet have some psychic powers themselves, being able to kind of put that thought in people's minds that they don't want them here, that kind of thing. So who knows what kind of connection.
Michael, that it's a very good point, because that's actually why I was brought into the research by this think tank, was to find out what their language was, if there was a language, and if they have psychic skills. And there's a couple of things. I tend to think a little more scientifically about stuff. I'm not that woo-woo about things, because really if it's happening here and we're able to perceive it, it obviously follows the laws of nature. So let's look at the laws of nature. And one of the things I noticed about the Bigfoot, they not only utilize the forest and all the creatures by imitating them,